guys, welcome back to another episode of I Am I, number 96. What? Consistency, baby, consistency. So today I want to talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is more than saying sorry. To forgive is divine, so let's have a glass of wine and have make-up sex till the end of time. Forgiveness, right? Now this is a really touchy subject. It can be, right? There's a lot of levels to it. My teacher said recently, one of my teachers said, forgiveness is giving at a mental level. I was like, oh, that's a really, I like that concept. I like that idea that it's a giving at a mental level. Now, what he probably wouldn't agree with is what I'm about to say, and is that for some of us, we need to learn to be able to give to ourselves. So on my journey, the biggest thing has really been learning to forgive myself. As always, it's really about going inward. It's recognizing my part in it. Sometimes my part is thinking that I have a part and I don't have a part, and I just have to recognize that I just need to work with forgiveness, right? So there's a lot of layers to this. So let's see where we get into. When I forgive myself, though, when I recognize forgiving myself of my perfectionism, which is one of my biggest things, is needing to be perfect, right? Needing to have everything exactly right, needing to be this perfect human being, which is where on the spiritual path I've caught a lot of bumps in that I can understand intellectually, and because of my own experience, I've been so far down the road before, which I'm not there necessarily now, but I can't forgive myself for not being absolutely perfect. And that's why we get into progress, not perfection, right? So we just keep putting one foot in front of the other and moving towards it, moving forward without having to think that we are perfect or have to be perfect, right? So when we really start to work with self-acceptance and self-forgiveness, so that for me, that's just healing perfectionism, is forgiving myself for not being perfect, right? Because of the way I was raised, that mind of a child that has to assume all responsibility for the chaos that's happening in this world. As a developing mind, the only way it can make sense as a self-centered being, which makes total sense that we would be a self-centered being, is to say it must be my fault, right? So in order to avoid all this chaos in my life, the more perfect I can be, then I would avoid this chaos. And that is obviously not fucking working out. So I had to accept and love myself on that level. And the more I do that, the more I really work in healing myself and forgiving myself for being exactly who I am, exactly where I am, exactly as I am, with all my perceived flaws and shit, I see how difficult it can be to be a human being. And that allows me to forgive others more easily. Right? So when I can really see, because really it doesn't happen often until you really walk in someone else's shoes. Like you think you know, and you just don't. You have no idea what other people might be going through, So, and recognizing how hard it is to change and heal ourselves, then it's crazy to actually try and change or heal someone else. And, it happened, particularly, it happened very recently where it was like with someone that because because the humanity came out from within me in a relationship where it was perceived that I was no longer this perfect thing, that they might have put me up on this pedestal, right? And I had to be able to love and accept myself exactly as I was and not keep trying to be this idea and this mode of perfection that it's just not real. It's not real in this physical, tangible world, right? That I am a human being that's learning and growing and ever expanding, and a human being that happens to be absolutely fucking fantastic, might I add, right? So I'm really dropping that whole, the ego thing is about forgiving myself for tearing myself down. It's like no longer tearing myself down or thinking not enough. That's me. Some of you might need to fucking We all need to check and look at stuff and see like where, but that happens when we start to heal and forgive ourselves. We start to see with more clarity. We start to give ourselves that love and self-acceptance. We start to see the reactions and the things that we did based on thinking that we were trying to get it from an external source, and that changes everything, right? So then I'm more easily forgiving others that are still in their space of perfectionism or seeking it in the external world. It kind of happens, and I'm like, oh, I know what that is, and maybe I step away from it, right? Because forgiveness, we have this idea that forgiveness of other people now, right, means that we're excusing their behavior, and we are in no fucking way excusing their behavior. As a matter of fact, forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. This is very difficult to grasp, but this is where we step out of a victim role. Sidebar for a moment. Some of you are actually thinking you're forgiving, and what you're actually doing is excusing behavior and not recognizing that you are a victim. So that's a whole nother level. That means, and that's a shitty place to be in, because then you actually have to recognize that you are a victim, move into this victim role, understand that you have been victimized. You may have a responsibility in it, you may not, right? To some degree, there's usually some space where we were wanting something externally, where we were blind and let things go, and because of our ignorance, and that doesn't mean we're stupid, we're just ignorant and we don't know, allowed ourselves to move into a space where we're being victimized, but we don't even recognize it and we're excusing other people's behavior. In that case, you need to actually recognize that this is unacceptable behavior. You need to allow yourself to feel the pain of actually being victimized in that way. Go through that, maybe even feel the rage and the fucking anger and all the process to go through to get to actually then forgiveness. You actually have to stop saying they did the best they could so you can come back to saying they did the best they could, or they're doing the best that they can. Because if you're saying they're doing the best they can, or they did the best they could, whether it be your parents or a lover or whatever it is, and you're actually just excusing their behavior and you're not actually digging into allowing yourself to be that victim, some of you need to allow yourself to recognize that you have been victimized, that you have been verbally or physically or whatever abused, and actually deal with that. That's a whole nother level, but then it still comes back to forgiveness. Right? Just to be clear, forgiveness has nothing to do with taking somebody back and getting back into dysfunctional relationships that are completely unhealthy. It has to do with detaching with love, removing yourself from those situations need be, right? And being able to raise yourself into a higher vibrational frequency so you can be happy and free and open and loving and not being stuck, pulled down by resentment and fear and doubt. And it's a space of, even if you're moved away from them, they could still have that control of you. It's removing yourself from that space by disconnecting and forgiving. That love and that forgiveness to them and moving away from them is going to be what detaches you from them. But if we move into the victim role, if we are angry and well, I don't give a fuck, all right? Somebody said to me once, like, I've forgiven, I've let it go, I don't give a fuck if he lives or dies. Like, I don't know, maybe you need a little bit more work there, because that anger and that resistance, that's a defense mechanism. That's a protection. But what we don't understand is when we're in that space and we've removed ourselves from the perpetrator or whatever it is, right? Remove ourselves from that person. That now if we are holding on to it, they say it's like resentments or like taking rat poison and expecting the other person to die. You don't recognize that I'm talking about for your own happiness, it's like, I don't give a fuck if you're on a spiritual journey, whether you know it or not, but for your own happiness in this life. If you're resonating in a place of resentment, you're here instead of open and free. And a lot of it is actually just letting go of that control, letting go of the mind and healing the mind that thinks that it needs to be a certain way and wants it a certain way. It's expectations and the way we wanted it. We have to allow ourselves to forgive ourselves for having those expectations, and for having those expectations not met, forgive the other person for not meeting those expectations, right? And that may be our part in it, is having certain expectations in this life. And we suddenly find out the world is not what we expected it to be. And there's an acceptance of that. And acceptance and forgiveness definitely go hand in hand, right? So that's a space of where we can forgive them, for they know not what they do, right? And that is, forgive myself, for I know not what I do or what I have done, right? It's really allowing myself to see that when I look deeper, I don't even know where I was operating in certain ways that may have been not beneficial to myself and other people. And it's allowing ourselves to heal into this space of love and forgiveness, right? And it's a really difficult place to step out of that victim role and to move into forgiveness and stop thinking that you are excusing their behavior in some way. When we go according to the philosophy, it's understanding that in that space of our divine core, there actually is no healing or forgiveness necessary. That you already are forgiven, right? And that everyone else, already is forgiven. So it's really a mental state to recognize in our minds that they think that there has been some wrongdoing happening, right? And again, in our bodies and in our minds, there may have been that space of the wrongdoing happening. But when we connect down into the space outside of our minds and outside of our bodies, or inside our minds, going inward, I don't fucking know. It's not so the inside the mind or inside the body. It's outside of that. It's a different thing, right? But it's within who we are. When we start sifting through the layers of everything and getting back down to a space that is outside of the mind. Outside of the mind, everything is absolutely perfect exactly as it is. Exactly as it is. All the pain, all of that is body, but pain belongs to the body, emotional pain belongs to the mind, but it does not happen to you. You, my dear, dear souls, are completely unaffected by anything that happens in this world. I'm telling you this. The core of who you are, the consciousness, the self, the divine state of who you truly are cannot be affected. It is that anahata, the unstruck space in the heart that cannot be wounded. No weapon forged against it can ever hurt it. That is what's really you're stepping into, is a space of recognizing that you already are forgiven. You already are healed. You already are whole. You already are complete. Your mind will not recognize that. It does not want to, right? And it really never will be whole, healed, and complete. It is finite. That's why we have to recognize that the mind is something that we use. It is not who we truly are. It's like the main fucking teaching is like the biggest thing is you've got to get out of your mind. I say it all the time. It's recognizing that where you're living in is your mind. Now, the way out, the only way out I know is recognizing first off that we are not that mind. So we are not that wounded space, right? That mind may be wounded. The body may be wounded. But we are not that. So then those will heal as we step out of that space. And really, if you're somebody that is stuck in your mind in the chaos of it, it's by moving and sifting through all of it, so that we leave no stone unturned, right? That we look at, understand the levels and the depths of who we are, piece by piece by piece, right? With a sense of ease and forgiveness, because everything becomes defensive. No, the ego does not want to look at itself. It does not want to look at responsibility. It does not want to actually understand that it could be jealous, that it could be angry. Can we actually forgive ourselves for having the most fucked up thoughts? I have the most fucked up thoughts. I mean, crazy. And my therapist said to me once, well, can you just laugh at them? And I was like, no. Took it very fucking seriously. And now I get it. Now I'm in a space of recovery and emotional sobriety enough where I can holy shit, okay, that's not me, that's my mind. That doesn't mean I don't take responsibility for my mind, because it is my mind. I am operating this sucker here. I have taken responsibility for this, right? So, but I don't have to think then that I'm a piece of shit for having had those thoughts. Right, the shame and the fear and the doubt that comes on top of all that because of this moral programming that I think I'm supposed to have, that it's messed up, or that I'm outside of the norm or anything like that, and everyone else is just shunning it and not even allowing themselves to look into the dark spaces inside of themselves. Freedom is to uncover all of it, and it's chaos at first, and there's fucking anger and resentment and vicious, and maybe you need to take space, and maybe you need to go away, maybe you need to do whatever, until you come into that space of actually being able to forgive. To be able to forgive yourself for being human, for being in that space of being flawed, right? Flawed. This is perceived flaws. You're fucking amazing, exactly as you are. 100 trillion cells. I mean, it's a miracle. The fact that I'm speaking and it's coming out into your ears and you think you know what I'm saying anyway, because I don't even fucking know what I'm saying. But that this is all happening, like the very simple fact that you're alive is a fucking miracle. You are a beautiful expression of divine love on this planet. You are already forgiven. Whether or not you believe some dude died for you or not, that doesn't matter. And I've talked about it before. If you believe that Jesus Christ died for your sins so that you are forgiven, look at those fucking people. They're some of those. They're out of their fucking minds. They are out of their mind. They're fucking crazy. The early Christians were willing to go to their fucking death for this shit. You're insane. They're insane. And it's beautiful. It's fucking beautiful. But they're happy. They're fucking chill. And it moves people, you know? Now, getting into the space where they're just becoming fucking, Jesus died for your sin. I'm like, yo, back up, bro. You know what I'm saying? That's just me. Like, he did not, if he died for my sins, that's fine. Gurus can potentially have the ability to take on some of their followers' karma, apparently, right? So has been said. So that motherfucker, that guru, if you want to follow him and let him take some of your sins away, sure. But if you now have a psycho-spiritual receptacle for all of your sins, but it doesn't matter, you don't need that. You just need to understand that you are already forgiven. In that space, you are already forgiven, right? It's not this damning condemnation that you've done something wrong. It's all in the mind. It's this mess of fucking bodies and wills coming together. Outside of all that, you are already forgiven, and let that emanate out from us. In Lakesha Lakin, I am you, you are me. Namaste. What? Too much?